One of the most exciting things about the Alumni Network is finding out what everyone has been up to since they worked at PwC. And I'm super excited to be interviewing a bunch of really interesting former colleagues to find out what they've been up to since they left the firm. This is your PwC Alumni Network with me, Andy Woodfield. Today I'm going to be talking to Tracey Bleakley. Tracey joined Hospice UK in January 2016. Before then, she was the CEO of the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners. She was also UK director of the charity Mend, which tackles obesity and promotes healthy living. She's spent 13 years in management consulting with PwC, Accenture and ITV. Tracey is on the Lancet Commission into the Value of Death, and she's also the co-chair of the Palliative Care Collaborative. Hi Tracey, it's a pleasure to chat with you today. So you're the Chief Executive of Hospice UK. Can you tell me a little bit about Hospice UK?
Yeah, so we're a federation of hospices all across the UK. So in England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, there's about 220 hospices. And what we're trying to make sure is that everybody, no matter who they are, where they are, or what condition they have, has the access to good palliative and end-of-life care as and when they need it.
Sounds amazing. I feel like I've got a lot to learn about hospices. I'm guessing that this year, which has been extraordinary for all of us, has been super extraordinary for you in your role. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Before this year, we were very much a leadership organisation. So it was very much about leading the sector, bringing best practice in, looking at new things that were happening. So whether it was responding to dementia or responding to COPD and heart failure and so forth, and basically new ways of looking after people in community settings and getting them out of hospital when they didn't want to be there and looking after them at home. So fairly straightforward. We knew where we stood and hospices knew where they stood, and we all worked together. And then suddenly this year, we realised that a tsunami was going to hit hospice and end-of-life care because we relied on £1 billion a year of fundraised income. And we could suddenly see with shops being closed overnight, events being stopped, social distancing, issues with the economy, that a lot of that income was going to be wiped out, and potentially hospices were going to find themselves going under in a matter of months. So we had to change ourselves and become very much the head office overnight, very much running directly the income streams into hospices. And I found myself in a phone call with NHS England. It was very early on. And I just happened to say, I think off the top of my head, knowing the figures as I do, that we're going to need £70 million a month to keep hospices going from the government, in addition to the government funding that we already got. And there was a large sort of intake of breath on the phone call. And they said, wow, that's going to be almost impossible. And I said, well, we're going to need to find the money. So I came off the call and I thought, right, this is the way I'm going to do it, because the government was saying they weren't going to bail out charities. So I thought, well, it's a straightforward business transaction then. Either we stop doing the work, or we say the NHS needs all of this activity from hospices. We'd normally pay for it ourselves, but if you still want it, you need to purchase it. A straightforward calculation on a tariff basis to say we were talking about 6,800 bed days. So whether that's a bed in an inpatient unit or a bed at home where somebody is dying and needing specialist support. And then 82,000 community contacts. So that might be grief and bereavement support. It might be a phone call to say how you're doing. It might be a web chat with a family and so forth. So we put that together in a commercial contract. I'm going to make it sound very easy. It was really, really difficult negotiation. It only lasted 3 weeks. It's the longest 3 weeks of my life. Culminated with actually negotiating on the phone with the Chancellor of the Exchequer. And they agreed to give us 200 million for the first 3 months to support hospices and to sign into the commercial contract. After that, we've secured further funding, but it totally changed my organisation. We became a commissioner. So we took on all the risk. My board were very much behind us from a governance perspective, but we took on all the risk for delivering this contract on behalf of NHS England and the Department of Health. And we didn't actually run any of the hospices. They're all independent organisations. So then we had to very quickly subcontract them, make sure we carried on delivering the services, do more to help more people, keep people out of hospital and just keep it working. And somehow we did.
That's unbelievable. I mean, I was kind of aware of some of that, but not the level of risk and the kind of jeopardy everything was in. That's amazing. How have you coped with that yourself as an individual?
So I think what I learned is the most important thing I've ever done from a management perspective was climb Kilimanjaro, because I found it really tough. I'm not particularly fit or sporty or anything like that. And every single day when I went to bed, I had to say to myself, no matter how rubbish I feel right now, or altitude sickness or whatever, we've got further today. That's in the bank. Go to bed, sleep, forget about it. Deal with the things you've got to deal with, like hydration and food. Get the sleep, and then trust. The next day you'll wake up with new ideas and you'll get further again. And that's what I had to do for this 3 weeks. Because don't forget, there was 220 hospices behind me, and they could have done their own campaigns. They could have sided with others. They could have gone to their own MPs. They could have gone to the press. And after about a week of behind the scenes negotiation, for the last 2 weeks, I was saying to them every day, trust me, you've got to trust me. Please stick behind me. And I was thinking, if I don't pull this off, I'm going to look like a bit of a lemon. And worse than that, there's going to be so many people who are going to miss out on care. Yeah, I got a phone call the night before from the Treasury who said, if you would take 100 million for the 3 months, we'll give it you now. If you want to hang on for the 200 million, it's going to be tricky and you might get nothing. And I knew the figures so well that I just said, thanks very much for the call. I'll stick with the 200, which is what meant that I had to negotiate directly with the Chancellor. And I put the phone down, and this was about 10 o'clock at night, and I put Kenny Rogers, the gambler, on and sat there and had a glass of wine. And I thought, oh my goodness, what have I done? But sometimes you've just got to trust the data. You've got to trust your gut instincts. And what's the point in only going half measures and then hospices still going under and not helping people? So kind of an instinctive thing, I think, but based on data and evidence and what we needed to do.
It's amazing. You must be really proud of what you and the team have done. I know that organisations like yours, where, as you said, hospices are independent, they can do their own thing.
Yeah.
You really have to prove your value to them. And, by all accounts, you've totally nailed that. So there shouldn't be any question about that. I'm wondering, back to your career at PwC, which was some time ago. I think we just missed each other. I joined in April 1998, and I also joined Pricewaterhouse. I noted that you joined Pricewaterhouse just before in that year of the merger with Coopers and Lybrand. So I'm just, and as you know, I'm talking to lots of alumni, interesting folks with different stories. I'm kind of intrigued to know what, if anything, stays with you from that time at PwC back in '98.
I think it's that can-do culture. It was my first job out of university. I had worked through university at British Rail, actually. So I was very much used to sort of solution and problem solving, but there was just this idea that you would work on projects with people, and it didn't matter who the different people were in the organisation, all the way up to partner. If you had an idea, people took it seriously. And I think that really made a difference, that I could just say to NHS England, I could talk to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, I could talk to Matt Hancock and say, this is what we need. I wasn't afraid of them. I've never been afraid of saying things or being cut down, or you don't have the right terminology, or you don't have the right knowledge, because I think I kind of grew up with that in my first job at Pricewaterhouse. I think I also really took the culture for granted, if I'm honest. So moved around a bit in my career, and difficult to come across an organisation as supportive as Pricewaterhouse, and I'm sure PwC is now, just in terms of looking after the individual and a more rounded individual. I think I assumed every organisation might be like that, and it wasn't necessarily the case. So I have really come to value the fact that I started my career there, but also the people that I met at the time. So one of the reasons I haven't had to worry about Hospice UK's finances, we didn't get any of this government funding, we had to pay for the beds and the community contacts, was we got a big sponsorship, and the person who sponsored us to do that was in my start group at PW. So a friend that I've made wanted to help, and he did, and we got a multi-million-pound sponsorship that way. So I think the culture and the ways of working, it's helped make me who I am.
That's amazing. It's great to know that our network is still working for you. That's great. That's a great story. So what's the future look like for you personally and for Hospice UK?
Well, it's really interesting. We've become an organisation that bears no relation to where we were a year ago. My strategy team have this year been running a national logistics organisation. So in order to make the funding work, we had to get PPE. and we didn't have any coming into hospices. So first of all, I had to whistleblow to YTN to get the top story on the news, to get the PPE company to move, because they weren't a government organisation. And then they said, right, if you want PPE for hospices, it goes to Hospice UK and you sort it out. So my strategy team have been literally running hundreds of thousands of items of PPE around the country on a weekly basis on a pallet shift since April. So it's sitting down and deciding as an organisation when we stop commissioning, and at what point do we stop running a logistics network, and we change the way that we're doing all the information sharing, and at what point do we stop running the national trauma and grief line that we're running for the NHS and social care? Who are we as an organisation? Do we want to go back to where we were in terms of a leadership organisation, or do we want to do something completely different? So we're consulting next year. Next year is going to be the big year of thinking about our new strategy. And I like the idea of being an innovation agency. So that's what we're putting forward, looking towards the future, constantly looking for new ideas, lateral thinking, what are different industries doing? How do we pull that in? Because the one thing we can't do is stand still. There's going to be so much change in the NHS and social care, so many things we've learned from COVID. And I really like the idea of pulling all of that together and making a big difference. So that's what we're looking at.
It's amazing when you think about what you've achieved. You are all about innovation, and and execution of those innovative ideas. So there are so many options open to you, aren't they? I mean, and going back to learn or to kind of rethink over what your strengths were in order to get you through this time, and then redefining the organization based on what you've now learned are your core strengths. Sounds very exciting indeed. One of the things we're always really keen to do is to make sure that for our alumni, you can use the network. So we've got 60-odd thousand alumni out there from PwC UK. Obviously, we've got over 20,000 PwC staff as well that will be watching these sort of interviews. Is there anything that we can do as a firm? And I know we've got a great partnership with Hospice UK, which was very pleased to see that all got signed off. Is there anything the firm could be doing more to help you, or the network, the alumni network itself?
I think it's some of those broader topics to learn from. So I was really interested, and I was accessing this through social media, on what you were doing when the office was closed and how you were supporting younger members of staff, because we're a smaller organisation grappling with the same thing. Should we reopen the office? Should we not reopen the office? Should we work from home? Also around things like mental health support for employees as well. Just learning from a larger organisation, not just what you're doing, but also what you're finding with clients is really, really useful for us. Because as a charity, if we can learn from everybody else, then it puts us one step ahead and saves us a lot of time and money. But I think the big thing's on my mind now. I'm approaching end of year, we're doing appraisals with staff, and it really is about management of careers, especially in a time where things are changing rapidly. So how do you make sure that people are still very much engaged in their own future, as well as being very flexible? How do we manage the mental health and anxiety issues that are not necessarily organisational related, but related to the bigger picture of what's going on at the moment? Things about that shift to working from home, and maybe some of the things around technology as well. So we're trying to look at new digital ways of working, and again we're figuring that out from ourselves. So anything we could learn from the network would be brilliant.
Oh, there's loads. I mean, I could chat to you for hours about all of those things. There's lots of good stuff in there, and I'm sure we'll find ways to support you with some of that stuff. And obviously the network have a habit of reaching out as well. One final question. I'm always intrigued when I've been doing these interviews, just to understand what is your real passion, and how would you describe how that real passion for getting up in the morning, how does that impacted your direction and the choices that you've had in your career?
Oh gosh. I think I'm a people person and a problem solver. So I like meeting lots of people. I like that lateral thinking. I like finding new ways of doing things. So in my mind, there's always a solution to a problem. I've always been pushing things round and round in circles and looking at different things and talking to different people and pulling different ideas together. So yeah, I guess I've been at Hospice UK for 5 years. We've innovated this year more than we could have ever dreamed of. We're thinking about becoming an innovation organisation. It's probably a lot to do with who I am and what I'm bringing to it, but that's really what drives me.
Tracey, it's amazing. I wish that everyone who watches this takes a moment to check out Hospice UK and the work that you personally have achieved with the organisation this year. And I hope, like me, they learn a bit about what a hospice is these days, and that it's not a dark, scary place where people go to die. It's a place where people celebrate and enjoy life and have a whole range of support inside of an organisation or inside of a care setting, but also at home. And I think, the work that you do and what I've learned about what you do is really very impressive. And it changed my assumption about what I thought a hospice was. And I hope, people continue to understand that hospices are actually places of joy and happiness and hope, and not the sort of dark places that I used to associate with that term hospice. So thank you very much for your time. And thank you so much for the work you're doing. It is genuinely changing people's lives, which is a remarkable thing to be able to achieve. Thank you very much.
And thank you for all your support.